Okay, hey everyone, welcome to part two. Part one ended due to due to institutionalized reasons. Um, it was what I felt was unnecessary. Someone felt was necessary, and anyways, I've relocated now. I'm in nature, giving part two. I don't know how well you can hear me. But anyways, guys, to kind of wrap this up, just to conclude the lecture, not to kind of leave it open-ended. Not all, how do I say it? You know, I'm kind of shook right now. Hold on. Okay. All right, guys. I don't know how much of this is being recorded and heard, but it's probably pretty windy too. I don't know what you're hearing, but I'm just gonna finish the thought. So, back to it. Are we recycling the world? Is the world recycling us? In some sense, what are the levels to reality? What are its cycles? And in some sense, what is the cycle we're in? And I'm kind of looking at it that there's the self, there's the species, there's the world, there's the system admin, and in some sense, with everything else that is simulated, we have a cyclical relationship, but with the system admin, we don't. And what that means is, in some sense, the self contributes to the species contributes to the self, there's that cycle, and then there's, in some sense, the species contributing to the world and the world contributing, or let me say it this way, it's like for yourself, you're in a cycle of like, you know, yourself with your species, you know, so the species forms you, you form the species, the world forms you, you form the world, but the system admin forms you, you don't form the system admin. Now, when it comes to the species, you know, in some sense has a relationship with the self, forms the self, you know, the self forms the species, in some sense, the world forms the species forms the world, but the species cannot form the system admin. Do you know? The system admin forms the species. And when it comes to the world in some sense can form a self, and then the self forms the world. The world can in some sense form a species, and the species reforms the world, you know? And in some sense, you know, the world in some sense it cannot form the system admin, but the system admin forms the world. And so ultimately what that means is that the human being is a sort of agent in this changing world where it is cyclically dependent, but the system admin is in some sense that which is not cyclical. It is beyond beginning and endings. It is beyond shape and form. It is the power that moves the world before it moves. And what that means is that we're in a very advanced system, living in these cyclical relationships, simulations over simulations aligned for one moment to notice beyond them. And so many forces come. There is a format to this reality. There is decency and decency. There's the ability to kind of follow the rules, or to kind of see, okay, what are the rules, you know, and what is the significance of the rules. And so in some sense, what is the attention of humanity really? So it is the might of our species, you know, wondering about, okay, we're in this cyclical game. You know, on some level, we recycle the world to, in some sense, generate ourselves, and in some sense, the world will recycle us to generate new human beings with new atoms. And even though we are conscious of 7, you know, octillion atoms, you know, that is your responsibility. You're not if you wanted to ever in your life feel like a commander of an army, any time you have moved your body, you have been a commander of 7 octillion atoms, you know. And now the whole point of it is that out of, let's say, what was it? Out of the gigantic number, 10 to the power of 80 atoms in this reality, to be 7 octillion, out of 133 non-alien. So 10 to the 1.33 times 10 to the power of 50 atoms, but in the observable universe it's 10 to the power of 80 atoms. Okay? And to in some sense be a human being is 10 to the power of 27 atoms. 7 times 10 to the power of 27 atoms. So right now we are noticing something strange happening for, this is going to be hilarious, for 0. For 0. How many zeros is that? We're a very small percentage of this existence, okay? And it's like 7 octillion atoms are being administered by by what to them should be a divine agency of the human mind. Okay, so what does that mean? That means 7 octillion atoms are being administered by a singular subjective consciousness, if you think you're a character in a story in this realm. So you have named, it's like they've named 7 octillion atoms. And those 7 octillion atoms are managed under a name. I'm starting to realize how important naming things is. You know, how important titles are. And the leaders of nations, they need to have their hearts kind of activate that they realize they're responsible for all the atoms that constitute the people in that realm. So the whole point of it is 7 octillion atoms out of 7 to the power of 27 atoms out of 10 to the power of 80 atoms are now wondering what to do with all the atoms. You know, physicists think it's easy being a physicist. You know, it is in some sense a beautiful mathematical chaos. You know, I actually appreciate chaos in mathematics, not chaos in external reality. But the bizarreness of, okay, so do you know what that means? That means if I forget everything, I have this attitude where I'm like, okay, let me just forget everything for a moment and look at things anew. If I for a second forget everything, it's like, okay, what am I? I'm this being in charge of a portion, tiny portion of the earth. And it's up to me, as whatever intelligence I am, to use these 7 octillion atoms to advance everything. That is the power of man. Do you know that means sometimes, you know, history, I don't want to say it's a nuisance, but it's kind of like, yo, I totally get it. The mind is not bound in time, but the body is. The soul is not bound by the mind's interpretation of time. The mind is. Wondering about the true depths of meaning on earth. So be conscious that the world, to us it seems unconscious, but the world is on, you know, it's very funny, you know. They said there's this, I think it's called glycation, you know, it's in some sense kind of like we're being oxygenated. At the beginning of human life till the end of human life, the color inside of, let's say, I think the muscles and everything, it's like things change. You know, right now in life, one can It's like you're witnessing your species chained. We are an enslaved species. We are enslaved to rules we don't understand. It's very dangerous to be a human being, because the danger of it is that the system that defines you was not made by you. It could be that the most advanced perceptions are not human. You know, decency is a choice, folks. Your response to situations is a choice. And it's based on your expectations on the reality. When those expectations are taken away, there's a retaliation of consciousness. It's as if you're sitting somewhere doing something, and in some sense the person could just wait until it's finished. But in some sense it's an immediate thing. It's like what I didn't tell you guys is that afterwards, I put the thing on mute. I talked to the guy, and I realize it's the pickiness of the ego. Do you know what I mean? Let me tell you what I think. This. If somebody says is being a self evil, that's a very deep question. Is being a limited entity in a limitless world evil? Like, is by being limited, are you evil? In the same sense, there's this story, I heard it as a kid, it's about choosing friends, okay? And the moral of the story. And the whole point of it is there's this old wise man. It's a fictional story. There's this old wise man. Excuse me, not wise man. There's this old man, right? And there's this wounded bear, in his yard, and he goes and helps the bear. And this is a story of fiction. And the bear's like, "Thank you, old man. I will serve you my whole life," right? Now, this bear truly loves the old man, truly cares for the old man. One day, right, the old man is sleeping and a mosquito is on the head of the old man, and the bear cares for the old man, and he picks up a rock and tries to kill the mosquito, but ends up killing the old man. So what does this mean? It's the moral of the story is don't hang out with stupid friends, right? Because but another reason of it is that the bear did not question the rules, the physics of its logic. It did not question the depth of the rules to its reality. It was just following the rules. Protect old man, but it didn't think at what cost. Right? So see, you as human beings can follow rules, but you have to at some point wonder, when the rule was made, who was it more made for? Right? And in some sense, what is an implication of the rule? This doesn't mean rebel against every rule, and this doesn't mean listen to every rule, but it means that that bear, if he had an expanded awareness to reality, would not have killed the old man in that fictional story, in that fable. So the whole point of it is, right? It's about expanding the horizons of our awareness, realizing the relationships of reality. Even though as an idea your whole life you have acted as an independent idea, but you are actually very dependent on the world and everything around you. We are involved in this system as a sort of gear in the machine, a cog in the machine. And so it's the whole system. And now we ask ourselves, what do we identify with? Do we identify with 7 to the power of 10 to the power of 27 atoms? 7 times 10 to the power of 27 atoms, or do we identify with 10 to the power of 80 atoms? Or in some sense, what is the depth of the edge of the system, and how is attention containing itself? And people are going to be like, Mr.Within, it doesn't matter, at some point you need rules to function. I'll be like, yes, but as I read for you in a lecture yesterday, it's like, what's the point of abstract rationality then? What's the point of realizing that means when you're born on this earth, you are in some sense a body. You get to experience what your body is like. Then you get to experience what your mind is like. Then society is there to show you. You get introduced to a ruled system, a system that has rules. Concrete, rule-based kind of thinking emerges, where you're like, okay, I'm not just an object. I'm not a object or just a subject. I'm not a body, just a mind. I am in some sense a self dependent on the system I was born in, and it has rules. But at some point of looping in the system, you begin wondering about how how you were giving meaning to those rules. You see, it's like society gives rules, okay? Holy books give rules. Many physics books give rules on nature, right? But in some sense, we have to ask ourselves, okay, are we, is when if I truly want to be an independent being, does that mean in some sense, being dependent on the system? And what does it really mean? Because physically we can't be independent. Human beings need other, we are biosocial animals and entities, beings. And at the same time, man, it's kind of like, you're born somewhere, your eyes open somewhere, and it's like, yo, man, yourself has rules, the species has rules, the world has rules, and the system admin even has rules. But at the same time, in accordance to which awareness do we identify with the rules? Somebody, I think it was Edison or somebody, he said, like, learn the rules so you can break them effectively. The point of it is not to break the system, it's to update the system, And for me to truly advance in this world, I have to be like, okay, what rules does myself give me that I need to see beyond? What rules does my species give me that I need to see beyond? What rules does the world give me that I may be able to see beyond? And in some sense, what rules does the system admin give that I cannot see beyond? I will never be able to see beyond, but I can understand deeply. So it's kind of like, all right, manifestation, you have brought me somewhere. I am staring at you every day. I am noticing it every day. And why have you brought me here for a limited time? That means if I was an immortal being, that would be a completely different story, completely different search for the meaning of reality. It's as if it would be as if seeing infinity as a simulation, but we're seeing the temporal, the infinite, the finite being simulated in the infinite. So in some sense, the matter is very different. Why are we specifically here for a specific time? And are we here to be conditioned by the rules of our world? That means, could it be that you have only been, the world has in some sense, God has been merciful to the world, and it's like saying, world, I am going to give you beings that in some sense will be able to update you, but only if you care. And so I do not just speak to human beings, I do not just speak to the species, I speak to this manifest existential world, because I do not know what eyes it has, but I know that there are eyes beyond it. And so it's as if it's the collision. It is the collision of whatever rules and accumulation of identity you are with the world. It's as if, it's as if you are telling yourself you are something. The species is telling you are something. Do you know what I mean? And the world is telling you you're something. And believe it or not, the system admin is commanding you that you are something. That's the difference. God doesn't, yes, maybe to some people, to Moses, like God spoke directly. But when it comes to, let's say, the common man, not the uncommon soul, the common soul, it's pretty much how satisfied are you with the value or the meaning you give this. And it's like they're telling you, hey man, as a fixed noun in a changing verb, how do you feel? I am very grateful we have minds. I am very grateful I can sit somewhere and move in my mind. It is a blessing. It is a blessing to be able to live ahead of your body. Every one of us is like this. Your body follows the commands. It's like your body is a soldier, your mind is a commanding officer, but in some sense the soul is a general and God is the emperor, even though God cannot be humanized. But ultimately, in some sense, there is higher power here. And when it comes to the administration of human events, it's all about how much you release intensity. I was at a situation right now, I could have released so much more intensity. Even afterwards, chaotic thoughts entered my mind. But at some point I was like, what is more worth it? To, in some sense, fight a being that can still change, or to change your own being? And wisdom tells me that anytime you're convinced that people are good and evil, that's when you've actually stopped seeing them as verbs. You're all verbs. We're all verbs. Being a human being, like this life, is kind of like a noun, like a simulated noun, realizing that there is an original verb. There is an original power, in some sense moving the lower power in such a way that it can fathom the higher power, and in some sense to the higher power. One of the biggest questions, you can say in theology and philosophy, where everybody understands man needs God, man needs a higher ideal, but why does God need man? And the answer is God does not need man. God has created human souls, to in some sense be able to have a relationship with God. You don't understand. Out of all the species on this earth, you're the most advanced, capable of noticing intelligence beyond you. If a dog looks at a human and thinks it's a human, when a human being wonders about God, can it see beyond human? And so think of it this way. If you see beyond human, you see beyond the element in the cycle that you're identifying that the world is changing. That means it's like to your body, you're a physical self, and there's a physical world external to you. You have a relationship with the physical world, but in my opinion, honestly, is that the mind is not a self. It's kept as a self. It's held as a self, but that means your mind can be the experience of a self, or it can be the experience of a world. So anyways, guys, I wanted to share this. Ultimately, be more aware. We don't know what happens in life. Sometimes we may feel we're welcomed in some moments, and then we realize we're not. But but the major defeat is to, in some sense, allow. Like, let me tell you, as a self, sometimes you need to listen to the world. Sometimes you shouldn't listen to the world. But at the same time, human beings have critical thinking. Critical thinking means anybody can tell you anything, and if you listen to it, you didn't think, you followed someone else's thinking. But critical thinking means press pause on everything, kind of take a step back away from yourself's, let's say, intensity of having something to mean something, and wonder again. So I'm pretty much saying it's not just that we are a self, we are a relationship of we serve the world. We use the world to serve humans, and the world uses us to serve the world. And the species uses individuals to serve the species, and individuals use the species to kind of serve themselves, right? Anyways, guys, thank you for listening. This concludes part 2. And anytime, like after this interaction with that, owner of that coffee shop, I came to see that I am so grateful I am aware of the future. Because if I identified with my emotions of the past, which at the moment of the interaction I did a little, but now I identify with the emotions of my future. Thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. Rabbi Firli, my Lord, forgive all our sins, conscious and unconscious. Ihdina sirata al-mustaqim. May God guide us to the direct path. May the original power remind us why we're truly here. May the most advanced guide us into the most advanced. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, guys.